I'm Doug Goodfellow. I was a branch executive here from 1977 to 1981. And isn't it great for those who haven't been here for a long time to be back to the Richardson YMCA? And not just to be in the building, but to be with all of our friends. And I'm talking about volunteers and staff, by the way. Sandy and I were talking last night about how unique the YMCA is and the fact that if it were only staff trying to make things happen, it would never happen. If it were only volunteers, frankly, it probably would not all happen. But that great volunteer-staff partnership that is such a tradition here also, not at the Richardson YMCA, but of course across the country in our YMCA, but especially so at this YMCA. When I think of this Y and my experience here, and all my friends who are branch executives and program people here, I think that's what stands out, actually, for us. It's the volunteers who we know, who we loved, who we work with, work side by side with, whether it was the board, whether it was program committees, campaign, whatever it happened to be. It was just a wonderful, wonderful, relationship that we had. I do want to, Jerry asked me last night what my Indian name was. And I said, and some folks might have heard it and some might not have, I said it's Big Wind. And that's a very appropriate name for me, not just because I'm loud, because I talk actually too much and too long. And I'm going to try to keep that down as best I can. And that was some kids who actually named me Big Wind. That wasn't my wife or another YMCA who did that. I do want to start off this morning, though, by thanking Jeff Thomas and his staff for just a wonderful event, a wonderful time last night, bringing everybody together. And it wasn't just last night. It was all the work that went into making this happen. He was in touch with Jerry and Ron and Mike and Ed and myself and Sandy and others about all the people, who meant so much to this YMCA, who we absolutely had to get in touch with, to make last night happen. So, Jeff, we thank you.
Thank you.
Very, very much.
Good job.
And Ed, even though your mouth is full now, what would a Y meeting be without a short invocation and a prayer? And so I'm going to ask Ed Ellis, the second branch executive of the Richardson branch, if you swallowed that yet, Ed, to bless this meeting this morning.
Gee, Doug, I'd forgotten your Indian name, and when you said it last night, I thought you said Breaking Wind. Or maybe that was the other choice.
The older I get, that might be true.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we're thankful for the opportunity to serve through the fellowship of the Young Men's Christian Association. We're thankful for the opportunity to have the impact on the lives of people that we have had, and as the result of our work, others have had as well. We're thankful for this particular YMCA because it has impacted millions of people in this community. We're thankful that you brought us together to celebrate that in a way that brings back so many wonderful memories.
I'm going to share hopefully a short one because we're going to be talking a lot about what happened at this Y. I want to tell you a quick story about how the Richardson Y itself was an influence on starting another YMCA, because that tradition in the YMCA, Town North helping this one get going, Richardson branch helping and being very instrumental in the Plano branch even be in existence. I feel compelled to let you know a little bit about that story because many people in this room, were a part of that also. And we'll just go back to, actually the story goes back to 1966, but where Jerry Harrelson and I entered into this story as we were students down at SMU at Perkins School of Theology, and I particularly needed a job. Susie was working, so Jerry didn't need a job, but he wanted to work, Kidding, Susie. Susie had already graduated from college. My wife had not, and we were living in a married couples dorm at SMU. And I went down to the end of the hall, and there was this little 3x5 car that Jim Curtis, who I also hope was going to be here. He was program director here at Richardson, and also worked a lot of part-time hours up in Plano. He had written this card, and it said, "Wanted mature, young Christian men to work in YMCA sports program at Plano YMCA. Call 424-8567. I remember the number. I remember the number. And Jim wrote that card, and I said, well, I grew up in the Y. I said, I'm going to run up there. You know, we were living on $10 a week for groceries and stuff, and we needed a little money.
But
And,
you had a chair. You had a chair in your little efficiency. You had a chair. You had a recliner.
We were recliner. But my grandmother gave us that recliner, you know, for Christmas. Yeah, we lived in married couples dorms. We had nothing. You know, you might have a rug. We were paying $50 a month for this, you know, roach-infested place we were living in. So anyway, I go up to Plano. Long story short, Ed Ellis is standing outside of the Plano branch, which was a storefront at that time, leaning up against it with a YMCA t-shirt with a blue YMCA triangle and a pair of shorts. And I drove up to Allen. I was looking for the Y I grew up in Connecticut, this nice building, you know, on the corner and so forth. And I drove all the way to Allen. I had to turn back. He was in the building by that time. I finally found the building, walk in. Long story short, Ed said, you know, love to have you. What this is all about is working in our sports program. Teaching magic classes and trampoline and BB gun and archery to children, which were all our great programs in the beginning. $2 program fees, by the way, as I remember. And then he said, do you have any friends? I said, well, I just met this guy, Jerry Harrelson, down in you know, the dorm that I'm living. He said, how about your wife? I said, yeah. I said, you know, my wife, I said, Susie can't work. I know she got a job, but my wife will probably be able to work. And long story short, again, we all went up to Plano, and Ed explained the deal to us. And the reason that I'm talking about this isn't that we got jobs in the line. I want to share with you the nature of what we learned and what we told and what we were told and what we internalized, not just then, but through our entire YMCA career. And as you know, Jack Simonis was a great influence on Ron. Ron was an incredible influence on Ed, Ed on Jerry, Jerry on me on, no, I probably wasn't too much of an influence on you, Mike, but you know, we knew each other. But it became very clear to us, and I know Jerry will verify this to the nth degree, that we weren't coming up to Plano to just provide a recreation program for the kids in town. We learned very quick, and these are Ron Kinnaman's words, that YMCA program was simply a tool, was simply a vehicle to develop Christian personality and character in the kids and the families and the adults who we work with. And I thanked Ed over the phone for conveying that to us, because again, we internalized that. We've lived our entire YMCA lives with that feeling and carrying that out, that program, whether it's aquatics or day camp or sports or Indian guides or Princess, is not the end in itself. It's what happens to that child, what happens to that adult. Under the guidance, Ron, of mature Christian leaders, not just staff, but also volunteers. And that was really the bottom line of what that was all about. And that's how the Plano YMCA got its start. We can remember coming many, many times early in the morning. We ended up coaching 6-man tackle football teams. We ended up refereeing ball games of those. We'd come up on Saturday morning at 7 o'clock, have breakfast at the Pit Grill in Plano, and then we'd go out and we would work. And when we weren't coaching our team, we'd referee the ball game from 8 in the morning till 6 o'clock at night. And then we'd play our own game. We were 23 years old. You know, we weren't very. We did that during basketball season. But again, the basic thing again, and we thank Jack, and we thank Ron, and we thank Ed for helping us all understand that it's not just a program. It's a program used as a tool, as a vehicle to influence lives. And that's what Richardson Y did for the community of Plano. There are 300,000 people living up there now. The Y is extremely vibrant. Ed, you're going up to take a look, a little bit later. It's just a wonderful legacy of the Dallas Y that we've all helped each other from branch to branch to branch. And it's the people, excuse me, Jim, the people. All right, Walter came first.
Now, since Doug has carried so much of the burden and everybody thinks how wonderful he is, I'm gonna tell you the other side of Doug.
All right, the dirt.
I started out in 1980 in Indian Guides, not even knowing that there was such a program. I just happened, right? And before I knew it, I started in January of '81 on Sustaining Campaign, which at that time, unfortunately for guides, was disastrous. We raised all of about $2,500, and it was mostly me.
It was 90, but that's okay.
Me and Ugly Buzzard, who was the chief. And then Ugly Buzzard.
JB Forrest.
This might be the best name I've ever heard. Ugly Buzzard in the spring coaxes me to meet with Doug so the two of them can gang up on me and talk me into becoming the new chief. Well, I let him do it because I was promised by Doug that there was nothing to worry about. God's basically over. Come back to the Y mid-August and we'll get you off running. Mid-August, I walked back into the Y, walked up and said, "Is Doug in? I'm the new guide chief and he's supposed to get me started." And they looked around and they said, "Doug, he's gone." And didn't really leave me quite stranded. We got my cool outstanding replacement. And they hired a former chief of princesses to work as a part-time program director, and all he did was guide and princesses. I never had to do a thing. It was fantastic. But I've always been wanting to bump into Doug again, which I did last night, and remind him how he abandoned me in my moment of need.
That's a great story.
Well, I've got one that'll make you feel better.
Which one?
Catch up. Yeah, I had Doug and Jerry and a couple other guys for Perkins, and so we had a pretty good year at the Plano Y, and I needed to hire a program director. And so I talked to both Jerry and Doug, and Jerry, he hadn't finished school yet, and he had this big bank job in the summertime that was really, making money. and so maybe Susie quit by then, I don't know. Anyway, he made this financial decision that no, I gotta get the bonds. So, long story, I offered the job to Doug, and he and Betsy were so excited, and I was excited, just, gosh, full time on the job, ready to go. And Doug said, well, just before he was willing to start, or ready to start, his grandfather died. And so he had to go back to New Hampshire for a week or so. And when he got back, first time I just wrote him up and said, Doug, I got to talk to you. Oh, okay. I said, I'm not in Plano anymore.
So there's a story. It was your training on it.
Yeah. One of the reasons I came into Y,
So I said to Doug, I said, now, there's going to be an opening down in Richardson, and I think because you haven't started yet and all of this, I said, you could come down to Richardson and work with me. I think he said something like, no, you SOB, I'm staying in Plano. No, but no, he said, I love the kids here, I'm committed to them, and I know what I can contribute here, and good luck. And he did. He stayed on as the Plano YMCA program director, and I got down to Richardson, and my sports director and I had a difference of opinion, and I called Jerry at the bank. And I said, I gotta have you. And he said, okay, well, I'll give it the summer. That's the end of that story. When I left Richardson.
The first event at the Plano YMCA was run by Richardson YMCA staff, and Ed ran it. I was a high school kid, and it was a sports camp in Plano that they put together, and they got some of the Richardson Y high school kids. It said, you gotta come out to Plano with me, which in those days was like taking a trip to Oklahoma City.
Oklahoma City's too big. Edna, Oklahoma or something.
And, we went out there, and it was Ed explained that there'd be 50 or 60 kids. In fact, there was 200. And so we got them split into groups, and for a solid week, we would train them in basic football stuff. One of the things I remember about the Y is Richardson schools didn't integrate until 1970. So the first integrated children's program I ever saw was at the Plano Y, where black kids played sports as well as white kids. And later, some 20 years later almost, I was a program director in Conroe, and two young boys who were in that original sports camp, they were cousins. They went to Texas A&M together, Pat and Jackie. And Pat had a scholarship to A&M and said he wouldn't go unless they took his cousin Jackie, and they did. Both of them played at A&M. Pat got drafted by the Houston Oilers. He said, I won't play for the Oilers if you don't take my cousin Jackie, which they did.
Yeah.
And they both started. And then later, you sent him to my office when we were in Conroe. And he had retired from the NFL, and I guess he was trying to do some business, and I couldn't help him. But we did sit around and swap Plano YMCA stories. And that was the first experience I had in an integrated sports or any other event was at the Plano YMCA. And some of that stuff we forget. It was a different time, but that was the first time that I realized that there were black kids in the Y, and that was the first time I began learning a lot of things that I didn't know. So I remember that very vividly, very vividly.
A lot of you don't know, my name is Jerry James. I was a senior program director here in the early 70s, and Ed hired me. We met at a convention. I was in Indiana, heavily involved with all the riots, and I was tired of all the riots and came home with blood on my staff shirt one night. My wife said, that's it, I'm out of here, we're out of here. So sure enough, a few months later, I met Ed. So, come to the Richardson Y, he had, as Harrelson mentioned, he got the log cabin, and then Kay Coleman was the main office manager. Some of you shaking your head, and she ran the place, literally.
I did what Kay told me to do.
Well, I guess Ed made, and also one of the reasons he hired me, because I am one that can speak as loud, if not louder, than Ed and the rest of the staff. That's part of the criteria. You had to be able to speak loud. Well, I